So these are going to be the best decks to climb with after the balance patch, and the first one is going to be Beast Hunter. It makes sense because it has a really solid early game, it didn't actually get nerfed at all, and it was already really strong, and it's got a good late game that revolves around several different cards. You can revolve around the Huntsman, you can revolve around Beastalker Tavish, you can revolve around Denathrius, assuming that doesn't get stolen by Theater, and if those don't win you the game, you have a ton of big beasts and things like the Insatiable Devourer. It's basically a deck that has so many tools, you can't really play against it, and then worst case scenario, you finish them over the top with your hero power. The next deck on this list is going to be Naga Priest, which makes a lot of sense because it also didn't get nerfed, but one of its biggest counters, the Smothering Starfish, did get nerfed. So less people are going to be putting it in their decks, and if they do have it, it's going to be more clunky and harder for the opponent to actually use it against you. So the idea of this deck is to basically just play as many Nagas as you can, reset the Serpent Wig over and over and over again to make giant minions that you can either bless or get stats out of the Palagos with, and then once you get some big minions at play, Boon of the Ascended, and basically finish them off with giant minions. So the next deck on the list is going to be Cursed Warlock, and basically the idea of this deck is you want to control the board and then finish off your opponent by getting giant curses that can do anywhere up to like 8, 9, 10, 11, or even more damage now that the School Teacher has been buffed. You're now able to use that battle cry to get even more curses. You can run a slightly different version of this deck where you do Imp Curse Lock, and that one's more aggressive and you use fewer curses, but you try to do them as damage over the top. The reason why I like this version more is because there is a lot of board-based decks out there right now. You have Beast Hunter, Naga Priest, Face Hunter, Token Druid, just to name a few, and there are probably other ones. And just having that extra removal has helped me a ton. I'm currently 8-1 with this deck. I absolutely love it, but you could play the Imp version if you want. Speaking of the Imp Curse Lock, you can also just play normal Imp Lock, which is still a very strong aggro deck. It did get nerfed a little bit at the beginning with the Vile Library, but even then it never really dropped below a 51-ish% win rate. And now on Hearthstone Replay, it's back to almost a 53% win rate. And with the meta, you know, constantly shifting, an aggressive deck like this is going to be very effective at climbing, especially in the first week or two as people are trying to optimize new builds. And again, if you want to combine the two, you could do an Imp Curse Warlock, which I will also put in the description for you guys. But yeah, this deck is very, very strong. The next deck on the list is going to be Control Shaman, which is basically the same thing as Beast Hunter, at least in like premise, but it's a little bit worse early game, so I moved it down the list a little bit. Essentially, it just has so much disruption and so many good late game tools that you can't really play around any of them individually. Like, sure, cool, you snipe Sire Denathrius, but you're going to be able to play Brucon and then activate it 4 more times with the Brilliant Macan Brand. Same thing goes with Mutanus and Theater to disrupt you. You also have a Murloc package that can really spike in the mid game or sometimes early game, depending on how lucky you get, so you can win the game there. But it's a little bit more snowbally and not as consistent at just playing decent minions into big beasts and winning the game. Overall, still a very good deck. Next is going to be Beester. That's what they call it on Hearthstone Replay, but really it's more like a token druid. And the idea of this deck is you want to just dump a ton of cheap minions out early and then pump them up as quickly as you can with Herald of Nature or Pride's Fury so they become basically unkillable. I mean, think about it. You play a 1-drop into a 2-drop like a Thorngoat Sentries into Herald of Nature into Pride's Fury. All of these minions are going to be like 3 attack, 7 HP minions turn 4, which most decks cannot deal with. I mean, even a Warlock, which is one of the best at dealing with boards like this, can't even deal with that until turn 6. And by the time it's turn 6, they're probably dead. So overall, this deck is really strong, really fast, really cheap, and I would recommend it for anybody who is on a budget. The next deck on the list is Face Hunter, and it's kind of similar to Token Druid in the sense that you can kind of build a pretty decent board quickly. The only difference is the board isn't going to be as big. You have Doggy Biscuit and you have the Ramming Mount and a couple of cheap minions to really get the ball rolling, but the damage from this deck really comes from the later stages of the game when you play Stag Charge, you get the Wild Seeds, and then Twin Bow Terracoil with collateral damage or aim shot. So this deck is basically almost as good on board as Token Druid, but the finisher isn't giant minions, the finisher is direct damage. And last but not least, I'm going to give you guys the honorable mention, the deck I've been doing very well with and I love a ton, and it is Extra Large Dragon Paladin. I've also seen a Pure Paladin doing pretty well not too long ago, so that could potentially have some promise. But the idea of this deck is to basically try to spike around the mid game once you hit that turn 3, play a ton of cards to pump up your hand and deck with the Snapdragon and the Alliance Bannerman, play some pretty well-statted minions, and then finish off your opponent with dragons and a ton of big things. So it's pretty strong. I'd highly recommend it. I'm currently 9-3 with it. I love the deck. It's a blast to play, and it's got really good removal against some of those really pesky decks with equality and city tax, like, you know, those big decks I talk about, Face Hunter and Token Druid, health doesn't matter if you just set it all equal to 1. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.